elevation.
Cool and Dre.
Big blunts, dope boys wanna smoke with me. Now we ride double M's through the whole city. Niggas talking down, but they always feel me. A 9-figure nigga, all I wanna talk is business. I seen a big mouth get a closed casket. Self-made, took over the whole racket. A kilo after kilo, see who moved the most. 200 for
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Goofy Investing, where we talk about investing in the stock market. This is the underground, small channel, big value, all right? We're going to be doing a stock analysis on a materials play, all right? Mtlmy Limited, ticker MTLMY. Trades on the over-the-counter market for $7.85. Has only been trading on this over-the-counter market on this specific ticker since January 12th, 2026. Market cap is 286.03 million. What are they? What do they do? Okay. Well, or where are they headquartered? All right. So they're headquartered in Australia. This is a foreign company that's non-domestic to America. They are in the materials and diversified metals and mining industry and sector. What you got to think about and what they do is they are pretty much a recycling company for precious minerals. All right. And they specialize in all of these different elements right here listed. Some of the big ones are gold, gallium, graphite, and copper, and so forth. I don't see copper here, but they do copper in there as well. All right. So what's the idea of this company? So they've come up with an IP and tech process where they could do refinement of these precious minerals. That the technology was actually accidentally stumbled across when the Department of Defense infused research funding of about 50 mil to an American university, and essentially that funding was to take a look at to see if we can transform plastic into graphene. Upon that process of research, they stumbled across this solution. All right. So, and with the actual atmosphere of economic tariffs between China and the United States, as you know, a lot of these rare earth minerals are coming from China. Your copper, your gallium, and so forth are actually coming from China to the U.S. This is an actual endeavor for supply independence of these precious minerals. Okay. And that's what this business model is. They're going to set up the infrastructure for NATO allies to do recycling of these precious minerals or metals, if you will. All right. So let's talk about stock format and formation, if you will. MTLMY. This isn't the only entity that this stock trades at. Okay. As you can see, they trade on the over-the-counter market for MTMCF. These are the organic shares of the actual company. They are headquartered in Australia, so the Australian Stock Exchange ticker is MTM. All right. This MTLMY is an actual American ADR. What is an ADR and why does this matter? Okay. So an ADR is an American Depository Receipts. This is it's still the company's shares, all right. But where it's applicable is if you're an American investor investing in an ADR, you will garner protections within these markets, within American markets, and tax purpose shelterment of when you report to the IRS. So different countries have emerging growth taxes and regulations that financial institutions have to abide by between cross-continental, cross-country regulations and rules. Okay. And this goes into the aspect of one country may not want to invest in another country too much, or they want to protect their investors and their market indice, if you will. So they've come up with these ADRs, which are, they're still shares, all right, but they're reserved for the American market. So actual investors and institutions can be protected under these ADRs for some sort of tax purposes. A lot of them may vary, but that's the idea. If I'm an American investor, bottom line is if I'm an American investor investing in a foreign entity and they offer an ADR, I'm probably going to invest in the ADR. All right. So now that we got that out of the way, all right. Um, in keeping with in keeping with traditions, let's take a sniff check on their valuation in business as far as their balance sheet is concerned. All right, 4 million in debt, 19.90 million in cash. All right, we'll go to their financial statement. Pre-revenue, they have no sales. All right, let's look at their margins. They have no margins. This is where investor skill comes into play. All right, you have to project out the gross margin, EBIT, EBITDA, net income, free cash flow margin, and so forth. I'll throw you all a bone this video, and I'll give you my projections on the profit margins and so forth. All right. Let's talk about earnings consensus estimates for growth of sales. Not going to have sales this year. Targeting 65.37 million in sales next year. I project this is probably going to be on the back half. Their actual refinery in Houston is almost up and running. Their patents and everything are all filed and everything. So there that is. So their idea as an Australian company is they're going to be building American infrastructure build out. So that's good. All right. Let's take a look at some of their products on their actual slide deck here. Let me see here if I can find it. There it is. So that's what their refinery product and IP tech looks like right there. They get the processed or junk materials or used materials, and then they use rapid thermal heat and so forth. Chlorine is a big deal that goes into the recipe of their chemistry. So there's that to consider. Within their actual refining facility, they're going to have these working, and they're going to have people working in there as well. They call this flash Joule heating. All right. And they give you a little bit of historicals and timelines here, which is cute. Really like their investor relations. They have a premium investor relations division or investor relations department where it's going to garner and attract investment. All right. And I assess they need a really good investor relations because they're going to have to raise a lot of capital, guys. All right. In fact, I project they're going to have to raise 1.5 billion in within 5 years of invested capital to hit in dilution. All right. Let's look at the financial income statement and look at their shares outstanding. All right. 504.8. We'll go on a quarterly basis to get an update on it. Looks like 579.9. All right. No gap between the basic weighted average shares and diluted weighted average shares, which is a plus to me. So where do how much shares do I think that they're going to have to, how much dilution that I project is going to happen with this particular stock in 5 years? I believe that they're going to 5x shares, okay? So if I go to my handy dandy calculator and I plug in 579.9 and I do 5, we're looking at 2,900, all right? So don't be surprised there. Where's this capital? Where's this? Why? What are they going to do with the capital? How did I come up with that number? Okay. So they're going to have to, with chlorine being one of their main recipes in the refinement process, they're going to have to create, or they're going to have to open up or stand up a chlorine facility. So that's going to run them, I project that's going to probably run them about 500 million. All right. But that's turnkey. So I think it's probably going to run them. They're going to do it on site. They plan to do it on site in Houston. Probably they haven't announced when, but I would anticipate they're probably going to try for 2029 to get that up and running. So I'm thinking maybe 350 to 400 mil. Yeah, probably about 350 million for the actual production of that chlorine refinement facility. And then I'm thinking another 150 for regulatory certifications, licensing. I'm thinking that's inclusive of SG&A of salaries, workforce hiring, and HR department, the whole shebang for that whole facility right there. So I'm thinking out the door that's going to probably run them about 500 million on my projection. All right. And then where do I get the 1 billion? Well, you're looking at cash burn here. Let's go to the financial statement. So, on an annualized basis on a trailing, they've already burned 35 mil. Think about how long it's going to take for this infrastructure build out. How much stock-based comp, how much salaries, how much, they're going to have to build out for refinement facilities in different departments as well. Do I agree with Houston being a good spot for refinement? Well, I mean, you got an actual coast right there. You got a dock right there. So that's there. I can see the appeal to that. But honestly, a little natural disaster happens and then water's flooding all up into this stuff. I don't know if, the chemistry of how their actual combustion process or heating process works. If a natural disaster happens, that can be incurred risk. Okay. So there's that to consider. Um, but with cash burn, raising of cash, raising of capital to keep the business alive, and for further expansion, maybe they want to open up another refinery with another chlorine facility. You can be looking at a billion, additional billion, and then some. All right. But for my projections, I think 1.5 billion is probably where how much capital is going to be raised off this equity. Considering that the market cap is only 286.03 million, you know, it is what it is. All right, so management team. All right. I like this Michael Walsh guy. I think he's a great face for the company. He talks well with investing entities and interviews and so forth. So a lot of this company is in the phase of raising capital. Um, they intend to uplist their ADR on the Nasdaq, and they intend to uplist it this year. All right. And I can see how a lot of investors would be excited about that. But to be honest, I mean, I don't really see it making too much of a difference in the short term as far as stock price. And I'll talk about price action later. But, you know, we'll just say that I'm not too bullish on the stock price. All right. How much do I think that this company is worth? Um, so I mean, I'll be transparent. I think the stock's worth $5.10 on the MTLMY on the ADR. All right. I think they're worth 186 million. All right. Given the circumstances of time to valuation, time to performance, and dilution, and these hiccups that I see this type of company or foresee this type of company experiencing on the actual path, um, you know, I think an investor probably need this stock a little cheaper, guys. All right. So there's that to consider. I think that they will be successful, though. They have entrenched government interests from Department of War, and maybe even Department of Agriculture might kick in a little bit later. So I see this company receiving subsidies and discounts off, lands and leases and so forth. Um, and I think that this is one of those companies in this business segment that the country wants to see or needs, quite frankly, for actual independence with these tariffs in China. Okay. I think that there's an assessed headwind happening after the current administration changes out and there's a new president and perhaps the Democrats take over and trade tariffs lift and so forth. And that'll be another headwind that's going to realize later for this company, which may severely impact stock price as they're trying to expand and less demand happens. Okay. So there's that to consider. If you're getting value out of this video, hit the thumbs up. That's all I ask. I'm not even going to ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel or hit the bell notification. All right. We can keep this channel small. All right. If you are interested in actually subscribing and joining an investor community, You get, I mean, I have a Patreon. You get access to all my deep dive collections. There's a lot of developmental stuff for investors. Um, I got I got investors on my Patreon becoming millionaires now. Join a community of like-minded investors. Get direct access to me and so forth, and all this instructional content and camaraderie and so forth. 15 bucks a month, you really can't beat it. I assess that actual realized gains in the investor's journey will overcompensate potentially with a great potential. If it's too much, click this little save 20% button out there. Pay once annually, one time annually, and then save 20%. All right, so let's get back to MTLMY. Do I think this is a good investment, and or do I not? I think it's a good investment, but I think it's not a good investment right now. And what do I mean by that? I think that this is not the sweet spot to be investing in this company, in my humble opinion. Would I ever invest in this company? No. All right. I don't hold a position in this company as a disclosure. What do I think about price action? I think that after NASDAQ uplisting, I think the stock goes down. I think it goes down to $5 range, probably even very probable into the fours, in the $4 range. Okay. Materials plays do not garner a lot of respect on uplisting on the NASDAQ. On the American investing cohort on that NASDAQ exchange, they're getting a little bit better and better about understanding margins and so forth. Let's talk about margins, all right? Matured gross margin, okay? Matured gross margin. How much do I assess that their gross margin upon maturity will be? I project around 15 to 20%. 20% more on the upside is being generous. I realistically think their gross profit margin upon maturity is going to land at 16.5%. I think their net income upon maturity will be 7%. And I got a leverage free cash flow margin at around 2.5%. I assess that upon maturity, this will become a dividend paying company, a dividend growth stock, and there will be a a moderate but consistent buyback program that'll run in perpetuity, okay, of when they become an infrastructure utility play. All right. I think that the sweet spot for investing in this type of company is shortly, a little bit after they post profitability on EPS gap. Stock will incline, but then it'll drop based on the market's realization of their margins of barely being profitable and the slow several years out that it's going to take to expand margin. So when that drops after their actual profitability occurs, I think that's really going to be the sweet spot, and right before they start a dividend of maybe 1 cent or whatever. All right. And then that is really, the way to build a position out right there in that sweet spot. How long will that be for this company? It could be about 20 years from now, guys. All right, so I hope you guys got value out of this stock analysis. You're always going to get the real deal and honesty from me. Even if it's bad news, I'm sure a lot of the MTLMY investors, may hate me for it, but whatever, it is what it is. Thank everybody for their support, for viewing it on my channel and having interest in it. With that being said, I love y'all and take it easy.
You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
One thing to question your mind, it's another to question your eyes and ears.
Remember how you felt when you were alone? You were miserable. That's why we're here.
You're not gonna do it, are you? Change the world. You're afraid.